In this lesson, we're going to learn 15 words that students nearly always get wrong. This lesson is especially useful if you're a beginner, pre-intermediate, or an intermediate student of English. But even upper intermediate and sometimes advanced students will find this video useful because some of the words, even though they're quite basic, still present a problem for higher level students. As always, in these lessons, we're going to study the words on their own first, and I'm going to give you lots of tips and tricks on how to pronounce them. We're then going to put them into sentences, because it's important to practice them inside a sentence. And finally, we'll finish the video with a little story where we use all the words we have studied. Ready? So without further ado, let's deal with our first word. And this word is one of those that I mentioned that might be a problem for even advanced students. Some of my proficiency students have a problem pronouncing this word. So how would you say it? So the problem a lot of students have here is that they don't know the difference in pronunciation between the singular and the plural. So how would you say it? Well, let's start with the easy one in terms of pronunciation, and that's going to be the plural. This is pronounced with a short e. Men, just as the vowel sound in the word bed. Men. No problem, right? So how do you say this one then? This is pronounced as man. Man. Can you hear the difference in pronunciation? Man. Men. One man. Two or many men. The vowel sound that we have in the word man is a difficult one because it doesn't exist in many languages. It's pronounced in exactly the same way as the vowel in the word cat or bat or bad. Man. This vowel sound is like a transition between a and e. And in fact, when you look at the phonetic symbol for the a sound, it's like a transition between a and e. So, man. Pay attention that it's a really open vowel sound. This means that we really need to open our mouth when we say it. Man. So, one man, many men. And what about this one? Because, of course, if we're doing man and men, we need to do woman and women. Did you hear how I pronounced the vowel sounds in the first syllable? Listen again. Woman. Woman. Women. Women. So in singular, when we say one woman, the vowel sound in the first syllable is u. Wu. Woman. On the other hand, when we say two women or many women, the vowel sound in the first syllable is a short I. This is one of the few cases in English where the letter O is pronounced as a short I. Women. So, one woman, many women. Now let's move on to the next word on our list. And this one is quite complicated because of the spelling. When you see this for the first time and you have no idea how to pronounce it, it's practically impossible to say it correctly. So, do you know how to say it? Let's check. Neighbour. Neighbour. So, this word has only two syllables, and the first one contains the A sound, just like the first letter of the alphabet in English. Nei. And then we say be. Neighbour. This last syllable is really, really short, and if you would like to say the letter R there at the end, you definitely can. In international English, we pronounce the letter R, but because my accent is British, in situations like these, I don't normally say the R. So there is no problem if you want to say it as neighbour. Neighbour. Just remember that that R at the end needs to be the soft version of the R. If you're from countries where R is pronounced as the R sound, it can be quite a challenge for you. So not neighbour, 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 or in British English, neighbour. Now obviously the person who lives next door is your neighbour, but what about the whole area where you live? How do you call that in English? This is neighbourhood. And if you have noticed, the word neighbour and neighbourhood are pronounced in exactly the same way in those first two syllables. So even though the word neighbourhood can be very difficult to say correctly when you see it spelled, it's actually not such a big problem if you remember the pronunciation of neighbour. You simply say neighbour and add hood. Neighbourhood, the place where you live. Now the next word I've got for you will probably surprise you because it's a very, very common word, but students say it badly all the time. So, how would you say this word? Listen and check. Love. Love. How is that letter O pronounced inside this word? Did you hear the O sound or the A sound? Listen again. Love. Love. It's the short A sound. Love. And it's natural for students to have a problem with this word because, of course, when we see the letter O, we want to say it as O. So lots of students will mispronounce this word and say love. But it's not love. It's love. I love it when students say this word correctly, and even advanced and proficiency students have a problem here. So, if you remember to say love correctly, it would be really lovely. And yet, all the words that contain the word love are also going to be pronounced with that short A sound. So it's going to be lovely, loved, loving, beloved for more advanced students. All of those words are pronounced with the short A. And speaking of the short A, I've got another word for you that contains this sound. Well, actually, it's two words, but they're contracted. So how do you say this? Doesn't. Doesn't, with a nice short A. Again, this is perhaps not a problem for more advanced students, but if you are a beginner in English, it's very often difficult for students at this level to say this word correctly. But yeah, this O-E inside is pronounced as a short A. A. Doesn't. Doesn't. Now let's leave the short A behind and let's have a look at an adjective that's very commonly mispronounced, even by higher level students. So how do you say this? Lots of students are having problems here because when they see the letter I, they want to say it the way they would pronounce it in their mother tongue, usually as I. But in English it doesn't work that way. When we've got I and R, and there is another consonant after that, we pronounce that I as a long air. So how would you say this word? Dirty. Dirty. Again, feel free to pronounce that letter R in this soft English way and say dirty. Dirty. That's absolutely fine. Whatever you do, you need to remember that this I is a long air. Dirty. Great. This is actually our next word here. Did you hear how I pronounced it? Lots of students have a problem here because they say greet. But if you say greet, you're actually saying this word. Greet means to say hello to somebody. She greeted us with a smile. This is great. It contains the same sound as the word neighbour in the first syllable. A. Great, just as the first letter in the English alphabet. Great. Just try to remember that because it's confusing if we pronounce it incorrectly. And now, let's move on to our next word. Now this, as you can see, is an extremely basic word. Or it seems very basic. How would you say it? Did you say live or live? Or maybe both of these are correct. Well, the answer is that this word has two pronunciations, and they depend on how we use this word in the sentence. When we use it as a verb, we say live with a nice short I. I live in Spain. Live. On the other hand, when you use this word as an adjective, meaning that something is happening at that very moment, you say live with the I sound inside. So, for example, I went to a live concert last week. They had a live interview on TV. Live as a verb, live as an adjective. Let's move on to the next word. How would you say it? The problem here is that lots of students forget that the letter L here is silent. We don't pronounce it at all. Listen. Walk. Walk. The L is silent and the vowel inside is a long O. This is going to be the same in the gerund, walking, and in the past, walked. Walk, walking, walked. And you know, the same happens with talk. It also contains a silent L, and it's pronounced with a long O. Talk, talking, talked. So next time you buy toys for your kids or your friends' kids, just remember to say walkie-talkie with silent L's. And now let's move on to our next word. Now this one is actually really tricky to pronounce if you don't know the rules behind the ed endings in English. How would you say it? Lots of students say it incorrectly because they say red at the end. And it's a natural thing, isn't it? Because you see R-E-D at the end of this word. But unfortunately, this word is not pronounced like that. Listen. Tired. Tired. Can you hear that I'm not saying red at the end? It's ed. Tired. Tired. You can also say the R, of course, and say tired. Tired. So pay attention that the R-E-D is actually pronounced as ed or ed. Now, why is this pronounced this way? Well, as I mentioned, it's to do with the rules of the pronunciation behind the ed endings. In English, in a word like this, when you add ed, you don't add any extra syllables. So if we just deleted that D at the end, how would you say this word? It's easy, isn't it? Tire. Now that you know that you don't add any extra syllables to the basic verb, how would you say it if you added the D at the end? You say tire, and then you add the D. Tired. Tired. You can apply this pronunciation to many verbs that end in red. For example, retired, inspired, or shared. Now let's move on to the next word. Actually, the next two words. Days of the week. Lots of students, especially at beginner and pre-intermediate levels, have a problem differentiating between these two words. They confuse them. Well, let me teach you a little trick to remember how they're pronounced. First, let's study their pronunciation on their own. So, how do you say the first one? Listen. Tuesday. Tuesday. And what about this one? Thursday. Thursday. So, Tuesday is pronounced with the U sound in the first syllable. Tuesday. Thursday is pronounced with a long air in that first syllable. Thursday. This is how UR is pronounced when it's followed by another consonant in English. Thursday. Now, if you don't want to confuse these words, try to remember that Tuesday, the second day of the week, is pronounced in a similar way to number 2 in the first syllable. Two. In fact, American speakers pronounce the word Tuesday as Tuesday. Tuesday. So in fact, they're saying 2, like the number 2. And it's the second day of the week, so perhaps this helps. Tuesday, Thursday. And we've got another day of the week I wanted to focus on here. How would you say it? Listen and check. Saturday. Saturday. Did you hear how I pronounced the letters UR inside this word? Listen again. Saturday. It's a very short syllable and it contains a very short vowel sound, like Satter, Saturday. Again, you can say the R, of course, and say Saturday. But don't pronounce the letter U as U, because that's incorrect. Saturday. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And now let's have a look at the final word on our list today. How would you say it? Now, lots of students are pronouncing it as coffee, but this is not coffee. Coffee, the drink, is spelled with double F and double E at the end. This is café. Café. A very difficult word to actually say correctly in English. Café. Can you hear how that final E is pronounced? A. It sounds just like the first letter of the English alphabet. Café. Now, it might surprise you that I'm putting the stress in this word on the first syllable. I'm sure that you have heard it pronounced as café in many series or American movies. And that's correct too. In British English, we put the stress in this word on the first syllable, café. However, American speakers pronounce it as café. There's actually no problem however you want to pronounce it. Just remember that that final E is pronounced as A. Café. Now it's time to revise these words and check how many of them you can remember to say correctly. I'm going to show you each word we have studied first, give you a few seconds to think about how to say it, and then you'll be able to listen and check. Ready? Let's go. Man. Men. Woman. Women. Neighbour. Neighbourhood. Love. Lovely. Doesn't. Live as a verb. Live as an adjective. Walk. talk, tired, great, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, café. Well done. Now it's time to put these words into sentences. Again, I'm going to show you the sentence first, give you a few moments to try to read it out loud, and you can pause the video if you want, and then you will be able to listen and check. Ready? Let's go. The man and the woman go for a walk every Tuesday. People in the neighborhood love that cafe. My neighbor is a lovely man, but he talks a lot. I'm always really tired on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The two women love walking and talking. That cafe is a little dirty and my friend doesn't like it. Working on Saturdays doesn't feel great. Well done. Now, before we move on to the final part of this lesson, I wanted to let you know that if you'd really like to improve your pronunciation, you should consider joining my online learning community, Your English Upgrade. Your English Upgrade is a wonderful place if you want to improve your pronunciation and other skills, and join me learning English on one of the 2 weekly webinars that are available to any member of the community. When you become a member of Your English Upgrade, you immediately gain access to pronunciation hacks, a full pronunciation hacks course that I've designed that will help you sound better and more confident in English, and there are other courses on the platform that are just waiting for you to click on and improve your English step by step. And, of course, you can download all the PDFs and audio practice files that go with this video and any other video that I post on YouTube. The link to the community is in the description. I'll see you there. And now it's time to put all these words that we have practiced today into a little story. As always, I'll be giving you time to read the sentences yourself first, and then you will be able to listen and check. If you notice that you are still making mistakes with some of the words we have studied, pause the video and practice them in order to avoid those mistakes in the future. Ready? Let's go! My friend Sue lives in a great neighborhood. Every morning she walks her dog, she visits a small café her next-door neighbours have. They open the place at 6 in the morning, sit down at one of the tables, and have coffee before any customers arrive. Sue always stops and talks with them a little. The man often has interesting stories to tell, and the woman is always smiling. Plus, the coffee tastes great. The cafe is a lovely place, and the only thing Sue doesn't like about it is that the floor is often dirty. Her neighbours only clean it on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and Sue can't understand why. Perhaps it's because they're a bit old and they're too tired to do it every day. Well done! Did you remember to say all the words we have studied today correctly? I definitely hope so. Remember that you can always come back to this video in the future and see if you can remember how to pronounce the words we have studied. And if you have any more energy to practice pronunciation today, why don't you have a look at one of these two videos? You're going to love them, and I'll see you right there. Take care. Thank you very much for watching.